There we go.
There we go. That was so weird.
That was really something.
Yeah.
So, all right, I'm just waving at people. So,
Yeah.
I know.
Be giving folks a couple minutes or have the two
Yeah,
minutes gone or are
we
they
can.
up already?
I was commenting on the madness of reopening.
Oh, yeah, we don't have time for that, do we?
We don't have no, not in our little hour where we have so much music to talk about.
So much to talk about.
DeMarco says, "Hey Ray,
Hey, hey.
my mom is here tonight."
Hey, mom.
So, all right. Well, we may as well. We've got a few people. We can start, maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know.
that's fine with me.
DJ, yes, DeMarco said it's madness. There's Liza. Hi, Liza. All right. Well, we can just start because it's an involved story. So,
It is. Yeah, what are two men doing? How dare we have a conversation about Meg Christian?
wonderful music. So, um, I loosely had connection with women's music through my mother, who was feminist. I realize now she was, I didn't know that. Like I didn't put it together in that way as a kid. It was kind of normal to go to now meetings and um, go to women's bookstores. And
Yeah,
so I
because
had
that was
a,
not my experience at all. Let's just say that was not mine at all.
so it was peripheral for me though. I mean, I remember Sweet Honey in the Rock was probably my biggest memory of anything that I later would learn was women's music. Um, and Sapphire, the uppity blues women. Um, but beyond that, I didn't have a real relationship with women's music until um, I moved to the Hudson Valley in New York and met Kathleen Mandeville, wonderful producer there, who had a deep relationship with women's music. And the gateway for us was a group called Jade and Sarsaparilla.
Oh
And she
yes.
said, "Oh yeah, you love Laura Nyro because I'm a Laura Nyro disciple." And she said, "But you've got to hear Jaden Sarsaparilla's version of It's Gonna Take a Miracle." She was like, "It's hard to top Laura and LaBelle." She was like, "But I don't know. I feel like Jaden Sarsaparilla make it their own." And so, hey, Des is here. And Joel, hey, y'all.
And I saw Liana join. Hey, Liana.
And so she brought the record over to my house one night, and I was completely turned upside down by Jaden Sarsaparilla. I mean, it's a radical thing to have never heard. I mean, I didn't have any real relationship with music that had any kind of homosexual messaging at all, other than maybe Sylvester.
Right. I was trying to think about like what was my relationship with anything gay and music, and it's like like the few artists that were out like Elton John, like, but it's not quite.
It's not the same.
Yeah, because it's still embedded in our heterosexist culture, and so to
Yes.
have something. The other thing I was thinking was maybe RuPaul, which
No.
is like the complete opposite end of what we're
Yeah.
talking about. Yeah.
So Jaden Sarsaparilla, and a month later, I found myself. I had a real health crisis. I almost died. I was sent home from the hospital to be in bed rest. I did not know at the time I would be on bed rest for 5 months. Struggled to learn just to walk, not to learn to walk, but to walk. Pain was so intense, and so I had nothing to do but watch documentaries. And I was on prednisone, so I was not sleeping. And um, one night, a documentary presented itself to me called Radical Harmonies. And it was on Amazon Prime at the time. I'd never seen it on Amazon Prime since that month. And Radical Harmonies was this story about these women I had never heard of other than Sweet Honey and the Rock. And I heard Meg Christian sing your favorite song, Liza, I'm Winking. It was Once Only Dining and Dancing. That was the first thing I think we heard of Meg
Valentine's
in
song. Yeah.
Valentine's song. And I felt something in my heart I had never felt before in music. And it took my breath away. And I scoured for Meg Christian records online after that and was listening on YouTube, which I'm really judgy about people doing.
Well, when you can't get it
And you can,
anywhere.
and I could find
And
it.
all the, like, so many of the albums in that documentary, it's just like, searching through Discogs listings and eBay and yeah, just trying to find the music.
So I watched the documentary over and over and over and just was writing down um, the names of these women and looking for their music and trying to figure out like where are they today, what are they doing, and how do I get their music. And so the next year of my life really became about, hey Robin, really became about delving into this world. And I moved back to Nashville as I was getting off of bed rest, met you.
We met, yeah.
We met and started writing together, writing music and creating together. And then
You showed the movie to me.
I showed, yes. Go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, it was such an interesting time in my life at that point because my dad had just passed and we had already known each other, but my dad had just passed when we watched that movie, and we were also like, that was really like watching that film and that whole period of us, like, kind of you introducing this world to me that you yourself were still trying to learn and understand, was the beginning of our relationship. So it was like all these things happening at once. And I was in the middle of putting my album out, Backslider, like, or putting it together, really, still kind of writing and producing for it. And like everything about that film and the messaging that we got in that was just so important for me to have those shifts when I was sitting there like trying to really make music with a socially conscious bent. Not that I ever wasn't, and I think I always knew I wanted to have that kind of thing, but again, looking for queer people, LGBT people doing that kind of thing. You kind of have people who aren't necessarily entrenched in a politic.
Yes.
Or just the craft isn't necessarily there. And not to diminish out artists doing their thing, because we're all just on our journey trying to scrap our coins together and make something work. But I was really trying to find examples of art that really took you on a journey and was really socially responsible, but also really well crafted, and then find all those things in one universe that was so before me. I mean, we're talking about 60s, 70s, 80s is what's mostly covered in that film. But I mean, just absolutely transformative. And yeah, Meg totally was something about her and the way she was presented in that film, and the songs that they highlighted in the film, and then the songs that we found available in places like YouTube. I mean, all of it was just illuminating.
Well, and I've got to say too, let's give some context now. We've got some people here with us. So for you, those that don't know anything about women's music or what this isn't just about, and it is in some senses, women making music, but it is also about, as a genre, women's music was really about presenting women's lives, but it came primarily from 99.8% of the women doing women's music were lesbian women. And so it was rooted in a lot of lesbian feminist principles and perspective in approaching life. And so for me, what happened for me was coming from an abusive situation at the time that had thoroughly made me look at myself, because I said, what is it about the way that I'm in the world that draws me to these abusive situations? And I did not understand that I was operating out of a heteronormative
Patriarchal.
yeah. And so everything that I was doing as a gay man, which we're always told, oh, it's radical. And it really wasn't for me. I was just basically repeating the same cycles that I had seen straight people all of my life create or present as normal.
Hmm.
And so radical feminism, lesbian feminism, really made me look at the ideologies that I was living through and living in, and really made me do my homework about what I wanted, what I felt, what was acceptable for me, what was not, what I would tolerate and be willing to take, and not, or not. And so the messages in Alex Dobkin, in Chris Williamson, Linda Tillery, Margie Adam, like these women's music what's my grammar? I'm saying it wrong. The music,
Was.
yeah,
Sure.
was transforming me just from listening. And of course, then I started reading theory and I started digging into, um, the actual theoretical writings that forced me to go even deeper. And it was just the greatest year and a half at that point of my life. And so when we converged as a couple, it really was because of what we had learned, or what I had learned from listening to this music.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel like same. I mean, oddly enough, feminism was never a scary word for me as, a black Christian kid growing up in the Midwest. I don't know. Something about maybe just because I, had so many strong women in my life, just the notion of women's empowerment did not, I feel like so many men hear that and automatically think that means they don't get to, be humans, I guess, because the only, anyway, yeah, we can get into all of that in another piece. But yeah, I think I was on that journey too. And, I was reading philosophy and, studying sociology and also, just engaging, trying to find like minded people on places like Twitter and Tumblr and really help accompany my own self education with trying to find like-minded people on social media. And so all of that was converging at a time when I was coming in my own racial politic as well as my sexuality politic. And of course, just, coming into an understanding of feminism was, just kind of a natural inclination for me, and all of that. And I think another thing before we really just really dive deeply into Meg's music is women's music was a major piece of women's culture. I mean, they
Yes.
really at that time, and it's wild because so many people don't know anything about it,
Right.
but it was an entirely new ecosystem that was being built
Yes.
by women, for women, women only. Festivals and shops and bookshops and just all kinds of different things that they were just popping up in theater. And it was just an incredible thing, and it's an incredible thing to witness now just in archival materials, because a lot of it still exists in pieces and it's evolved and broken open. And but what it was at that time was just so radical and so new. And so, I mean, I just can't even imagine being on the outside of it as a guy, but to know that it was going on when it was, it's
Yes.
just amazing. And so, Meg.
Well, and let's talk. So, I want to be really accurate too, because Alex Dobkin is often credited with being the first. She went in the studio with all women musicians, a woman engineer, if I'm not mistaken. Liza, everyone involved was a woman. And they made this amazing album called Lavender Jane Loves Women. And The Woman in Your Life Is You is like the flagship song of that record. And so many other great songs that are just oozing with feminist theory. I mean, it's delicious. And
And
so,
Alex's works are available. Like they
yes,
are in print still, which is wonderful.
yes. You can get them, you can stream them, you can listen to them, you should find them, you should listen to them. And so from that also came Olivia Records, which was seen as an enterprise that came from a collective um, of women who decided to start a record company, a women's music company. And they made this, so wild, only women musicians. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard rumors, and I don't know that this is true, but that even like the people printing the records, uh, women were learning how to press records, like to a women-owned printing plant, so that it was a new ecosystem. It
Yeah.
was a whole new mode of creating and the way of thinking about creating. And these records were, this is Meg's first record, I know you know.
Love
Uh,
it.
and they came with these wonderful booklets inside that had lyrics.
We really have to talk about the booklets too, because they really put together. I mean, just albums in general. It's the thing that I hate the most, I think, about digital music today is that you don't get physical product, you don't get a tangible piece or item. But there's something about the way that a lot of these women's music packages were put together, just the care and the detail, and they were telling stories about their mission and who they were, and you're getting, it's like a scrapbook really that you're getting with the music, and it adds to the treasure of having this tangible product.
And you got to see the women. And I want to say too that Liza just said who was part of Alex Dobkin's, what do we call it? Collective. They were all together as a collective. Alex used women's pressers, but in a male-run company. Got it. So these albums were amazing because the other thing you saw were all of the women involved.
Mm-hmm.
These were the women that made this record, that were involved in some way. Either they played on it, they took the pictures. And so every record had one of those moments where it wasn't just the artist as the superstar, but you were seeing all of the women that did not work in this field, largely in this. They didn't have the accessibility back then. It still don't. They were having the opportunity to make music, to arrange, to produce, to make with their hands this art. And
Yeah.
so that was Meg's first record. We've got the second one, Face the Music, which was brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
You get to see Meg on the back. But each album told, a unique story. So the first album was predominantly about coming out, love songs, a lot of love songs, sung directly to another woman and not masquerading as heterosexual relationships.
Which was, revolutionary at that time period. I mean, and even in the film, if you watch Radical Harmonies, get the stakes of just getting up on a stage and singing about women, and just how new that was to be gay and be okay. I mean, we're talking just a few years removed from Stonewall here. So, the criminality of homosexuality, like all of that is still very real and very tangible. And, I think decades removed from that, we forget just how, was not that long ago that this was, the stakes were high.
Well, and I think at this point too, it's important to set the scene so that people understand that when these women started doing concerts, they were not going to, the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville. They were having to find places to have concerts.
Right. Because they're not just going to let you in and you're, talking about gay stuff.
Well, and there's money, and money was a factor on top of all of that. And so, they were going to community centers, fellowship halls of churches, and women were fearful of losing their jobs if they were singing at the concerts. And so this was, really risky. This wasn't just about let's make music and take it to all the lesbians in the world. It was still a dangerous, risky thing.
And all of this happening while the second wave was also, going on too. So you've got even some splintering happening with groups like Now and, other women's groups that, maybe weren't so crazy about the whole Lavender Menace situation.
Right. Right. Well, and so the first record, introduces Meg. The second record, Face the Music, really was more of a political record. She dealt with racism on that record. She dealt with, you get a little glimmer that she's starting to deal with alcoholism. You get a little glimmer of that with The Road I Took to You, Leaping Lesbians, just really,
So much camp, and that's what I really love about Meg, is how you get so many different pieces. Like you get all of it. You get all of it. So you've got the really introspective songs, you've got the really political, we're gonna be on the front line songs, and then you've got, those fun ode to a gym teacher, just,
yes.
the humor that I just love.
And she was Southern. I think that's important to draw out too, because
Absolutely, absolutely.
she had this, and maybe it's because I'm also Southern, so there's also some resonance because of that. But there was a way that she presented that was not presumptuous. Colleges, yes, thank you, Liza. Colleges were big venues too. And so Meg was, unintimidating is probably the best way. As a listener 40 years later, let me say that. And so, you get the second political record, and there's some years in between, from 77, I believe, to 81. And so there was a lot going on for Meg, and she came out with this album that of all of her works, this is my favorite, Turning It Over. And it's very different. It reminds me in some ways of if Amy Grant were a lesbian feminist.
All right.
And so
I could see it.
you can see that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I hate to make comparisons, but when I heard this record, it reminded me of one of the contemporary Christian records of my youth.
Yeah.
And so there was a spiritual component to this record that hadn't been in the prior records. And I sniffed that out right away.
Yes.
And
also, I think the first two records, Face the Music was starting to go there, but the pop sensibilities, we would kind of go from the folk side of things to, a little bit more, I don't want to say polished, because the first two albums are beautiful too. You've got strings, you've got all kinds of wonderful arrangements, but there is a more easy listening kind of thing about Turning It Over as we're heading into the early 80s that you pick up on, I think, too, that definitely connects to what CCM was doing at that time.
Well, and yes, and you hit on string arrangements, wonderful string arrangements by the brilliant Mary Watkins.
Love her. And, it's tough because part of me goes there's so many great women's music albums that I'd want to talk with you about, but I also go you got to talk to some of these women too about these albums, because they're going to be bringing so much more context, and women that were there, but God, I love Mary.
Mary Watkins was just, there are not that many to this day women who are doing string arrangements in the music business. And Mary arranged at least 25 records that I know of during this period. Just brilliant, brilliant work, and did some solo records on her own. But
I love. I'd love to talk about Something Else, and or Something Moving. Sorry.
Something Moving, yes. So Turning It Over, the title track, essentially starts chronicling Meg's, what you read between the lines are the AA references. Mm-hmm. And so she'd gone through treatment, recovery, and I want to read this quote from her where she's talking about this record. This is from a great article in Frontiers. I'm sure Dr. Pabon knows Frontiers, and Robin, my friend Robin, is here. Frontiers, it's a women's studies journal. And Meg was talking about, here we go. The alcoholism for me is a disease. It's like diabetes. My body cannot handle alcohol. And she said, as I said in Turning It Over, that old righteous anger just ate me to the core. Many of us are beginning to realize that we're dying behind our own political analysis. I think that's something that anybody that works in social justice or activism in any sense can um, relate to. And she said it takes some real radical, deep spiritual transformation. I think that feminism has always talked about this idea in one way or another. And in my own healing process is absolutely connected to it. So in some ways, I feel the path I'm on right now is the most radical, constructive path I've been on in my life. And I meet a lot of other women and men who are finding the same thing. And so she was writing about in this song things changing, and you see
Yeah.
her emphasis, her focus is also changing. So whereas her, it's interesting. I was thinking about the first record, I Know You Know, as very personal,
Hmm.
and then Face the Music was very we. Face the Music was a we record.
It's very global,
It's
very
very
global.
global.
And even I know you know, I mean, it was personal, but I think it was that journey personal that like I'm trying to learn who I am, and also like even like Morning Song, like we're somehow learning it's okay. Like it's all that newness of being
Yes.
out and being okay with being gay, and the stakes being high and just going for it, but not necessarily. I mean, there's some introspection in that record, but turning it over really just that's when you're really getting, you know, all of that depth.
Well, the altar call, that Meg was always really good at, delivering for this one really is about let's reevaluate how we've been functioning.
Hmm.
And she did that not through telling anybody what they'd been doing was wrong, but by pointing out her own um, reconciliation with herself.
Yeah.
And so I'm just going to read a little glimmer of this. One thing's for certain, one thing's for sure. I just cannot fight with anybody anymore. All that righteous anger just ate me to the core, and all I have left are these moments of turning for comfort, turning to friends, turning it over again. Oh, our revolutions slowly spin me out and then draw me in. But I read the morning paper and I play my guitar. I listen for my music. I wonder how you are. And I'm afraid of my freedom, but my running days are done. So I start to sit still in my moments, sitting through changes, sitting through pain. Look in the mirror and finding a friend, turning it over and over and over again.
There's something that she really hits on with that song and with Restless, and there's something about the fact that coming out, or just reconciling who you are as an LGBT person, there's that piece of it, but I would almost argue, especially for when you come out and you just kind of jump right into that like activist side of you that wants to just be a champion for, and I'm going to go to Pride and I'm going to do all these things. And I'm going to, join HRC. There's a process of still coming to terms with being okay with you
Yes.
that you can sometimes lose in just kind of going from I hate myself, I hate myself, I hate myself to pride. And she really captures that really well. And the price of not doing that work, and then what doing that work looks like with this record.
It's the other side of the other side of there was actually a theory that I studied when I was in school about the process of coming out. And so there's this ebb and flow. Robin, Dr. Pabon, I can't remember the name of this theory. The Cress? No, I can't remember. But there was a theory about basically the ebbs and flows of finding identity and relating to identity and how that changes through age. And so you really get with Meg what happens after the big high.
Yeah.
After the big high, after the big, like, I've been doing my work, it's the, oh, I still got to come home to me.
Yeah. When nobody's around and I'm just
And
in
th-
my own space, how do I feel about me? How do I
and
feel
that's,
about me? And when I don't have the pointing at my gayness that I can just use to shame myself all day, like, what else is under there? And I think so many of us go through that. I know I've gone through that. Like when I don't have to deal with that piece of the shame, then it's like, oh, there's a lot more work I gotta do there. Yeah.
well, and that's a universe. I mean, it goes beyond the LGBT community at that point. I mean, that is basically anything we attach ourselves to. There is a high when you first get into it or first learn something. It's like, when I was in college and I'd watch my classmates. It's weird to have classmates at 40. But I would watch my classmates learning things for the first time and their brains alive and turned on. And it just becomes, da, 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 the big, like,
Her bangs were actually flipping when
yeah,
you
the
did that. Yeah.
the waving and the screaming, and I just kept going, oh baby, when you turn 30, this is all gonna be, you're gonna crash. It's gonna be all right. But Lord, it's exciting when you learn new things. And so this is like the coming of age, album. And
Yeah.
the messages, I mean, on that in that song in particular, just really hit me in my heart because I went, yeah, I'd done it. I'd come out. I'd been angry. I had, you know, cheered. I had destroyed my career. I did, all of
Yeah.
all of the things that you do. And then you go, okay, oh, yeah. And I still feel the same way.
Yeah.
And so, this is such a gorgeous exploration of that. And Restless, I think the other song on this album that really
Yes, which I mentioned.
articulates,
Yeah. Absolutely. Yep.
Restless really articulates any, not just an activist struggle, but a musician struggle. And so you get this story of constant traveling, constant changing places, constant. Um, well, I'm just going to read my favorite verse. Anger is empty. Relief has no power. Wait for the next plane. Gain the next hour. I'm restless and hungry. Too lazy to pray. I'm just holding on or I'll float away. This too shall pass. I know. But tell me, please, why is it so that all the best pass so fast and the lousy roll so slow? Uh, and so
Yeah.
it's just this story of uh, frustration, ultimately with a lack of routine that has become a norm.
Hmm.
And what she said, I just want some scenery, that is stationary. And so, I mean, as a working musician, I also feel
Yeah.
I resonated with that. I felt that though, just as a, uh, what were we when we were moving all over the country? What were we? We were,
What do you mean? What were we?
what do you call it? I'm losing my words.
Restless?
Transitory. We were so
Yeah.
transitory. When we
Yeah,
were so
sure.
transitory, I definitely, that feeling comes up again. And so she was just articulating these great, great introspections. And she talked about actually,
Wait, hold
and
on. Before
no, go
are you
ahead.
going on
Oh,
Restless?
no, I wasn't.
Oh,
Go
okay,
ahead.
okay. No, no, no.
No, you
You're still
go.
on Restless. I just don't want to forget to mention that her line about too butch to accept and too femme to decline, which I
Yes.
love, that was absolutely 100% influential on my song Binary, where I talked about not bent enough and can't lay flat. The same kind of thing. Just,
Yes.
when you're dealing with all these contradictory pieces of you and the day-to-day um, things that you're constantly being asked to reconcile that can't necessarily be reconciled, and that goes from sexuality to the political stuff to just what it means to be human trying to survive in this world. I mean, all of it is just it can be a weight, and she just talks about it so well. Go ahead. What were you gonna say
And
about?
really, I was just going to point out the brilliance of the fact that Restless is composed with every movement, every verse changing keys,
Yes,
going up and
yes.
down. And so
Hmm.
it's, and she, this, in this interview, she talked about how she wasn't even conscious
It
that she
wasn't
was,
even intentional that she was doing that, which is just so. And I mean, we have to talk about Meg's craft as a
yes,
composer, as a
yes,
songwriter. I mean, just to hear these songs, starting with the first album, starting with, even before you even get to Turning It Over, her sense of chords and the way that her songs have structure and don't have structure and have a completely different kind of structure than what I've ever heard anyone else do was just, I mean, it really cracked me open to think about the possibilities of what music can be, what folk music can be, as someone who wasn't necessarily listening to a lot of folk. I mean, I always loved, the Simon and Garfunkels and, some of those artists from the late 60s in particular that like, flower power music. But, to hear her take on all of that, having had them as direct influences, just
yes.
amazing. And then you have to get into her harmonies and the vocal arrangements, and
Well,
especially on songs like
I'm
Restless.
going to see if we can get in there with that. That's Meg and Chris Williamson and Vicki Randall doing the background vocals that are just absolutely exquisite.
Delicious. I mean,
Yeah,
just, I mean, and you talk about people my age and the influences that we have when you talk about vocal stacks and harmonies, and we talk about our Beyoncés and we talk about our Brandies, but y'all need to go and listen to some Meg Christian and some Chris Williamson and hear some of these vocal stacks and arrangements. I mean, just the most gorgeous and the pretty little nuances and embellishments that are on top and on the bottom, and it's just like, wow, they really made, I mean, just choirs out of themselves with everything they did. And then you add the strings by Mary. It's just the most beautiful music, the most beautiful music.
well, and I think that bringing Chris and Vicki Randall, Chris Williamson and Vicki Randall up are important at this point because also, we also have to talk about the fact that these women were intercollaborating. And so, is that even a word? That's not a word.
It's
Um,
not, but it's fine.
but they were
Yeah.
collaborating across each other's work. And so you'd hear Meg and Vicki on Chris Williamson records, and you would hear, you still hear to this day, Vicki on Chris Williamson's work.
Hmm.
I mean, so this is like a 50-year collaboration that's been
Yeah.
going on. And I think that also speaks to the power of this music and the relationships that they forged with each other because, you just don't see that consistently. I mean, it's not like they had a big reunion, and, when Chris did Pray Tell, and said, go, come on and do vocals. It's been a while. I mean,
Right.
almost every record they've had a collaboration.
Yeah.
And and I think that's really the other real gift of women's music, um, is that it's a larger body of work that they keep connecting
Yeah.
through those kinds of collaborations.
And the community that's formed, the musical community that's formed, or that was formed then. I mean, I remember being really blown away and watching Radical Harmonies and seeing what was being built when they could all just come together, not just with a collective mission, but with shared politics, and all join
Yes,
together and say, we're going to make something with this intention, and it's going to hold, these values and these core principles, and just to see how it took off. And that's not to say, I mean, of course, there were all kinds of, um, issues and bumps in the road and obstacles that came
absolutely.
up, and political differences, especially with, separatism, which, we really can't get into because we don't have time, but just, how all of that, was at work and, just causing, some of the tensions. But even still, what did prevail? The music and the festivals and, all the things that lasted for as long as they did.
This was a large network. I mean,
Yeah.
the music festivals, multiple music festivals were born from this. And it's also a network of other kinds of creators. I mean, Irene Young, who I think is really important to acknowledge tonight as well. Irene Young was a photographer. She shot a huge amount of these album covers, along with Joan Bryan. Um, But I mean, there was a coffee table book, y'all. There was a coffee table book of women's music called For the Record. And,
And
I mean,
gorgeous photos, just
gorgeous photos.
beautiful.
And this is, and I'll show Meg's. I mean, this is just really important that this was Meg.
Hmm.
Um, and just all, so you also got to see this wasn't just artists. This book included the musicians that were participating in these records. And so you got to establish, whether you ever met them or not, you were establishing a relationship with these creators. And I just think that's so um, life changing. I mean, we saw rock
Absolutely.
and roll do that. Liza Irene is brilliant. Yes, she is Liza. She's still working. To this day, you can follow her on social media. She shot also Laura Nero's famous Mother's Spiritual cover, and so much other work. But even, I mean, Laura Nero came calling because she wanted to, she was inspired by women's music and what the women's movement was creating, what was coming from women's culture. Um, Talk about, because we've got 20 minutes, and so I
Yeah,
want to make
yeah.
sure we've got some
We've
other
only talked
plugs.
about two songs. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. All
Well,
right.
I want talk about, because you talked about when uh, Meg's whimsy and
Yes.
her camp. So let's talk about the whimsical song on this record
Oh my
called
God.
Jim 2.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so first off, I love that it's called Gym 2 because again, you have to go back to the first
Ode to a Gym
album
Teacher.
for
Yes.
context, or you can go listen to Lesbian Concentrate, which also has the
Yes.
single version of Ode to a Gym Teacher. But yeah, I mean that first song was, being a child and having this adoration for your gym teacher. And I feel like every kid kind of has that story. Like I, totally had crushes on my math teacher and stuff like that. But to hear it from this lesbian perspective as a little girl who, it's so innocent and cute and adorable. But again, like it's this almost campfire type thing and it's a live thing. And so you're hearing like all the women in the audience and she's telling, it's like she's setting up the song with this amazing story about her
Yes.
teacher. And she's just such a great storyteller, even
She
when she's not
is.
even singing. And so, I mean, it's just hilarious. I can't not listen to that song and not, just laugh and smile, even before she starts singing the song that she sings. And so that's on the first record. Fast forward to this one, which again is all about introspection and, coming to your own. And now she's an adult and owning her affinity for exercise.
Yes.
Which, like, when do you ever? When do you ever? And like, when I think about like what might have been even like a possible like moment of that would be what? Like Olivia Newton-John's physical, like, which is so not at all what we're
Not what
talking
this is
about.
about. No.
Not at all. Not at all. And so just for any artist to, especially a woman artist to take on,
Yes.
her insecurities of, liking this part of herself, wanting to, lift weights and, her mom as a kid not approving of that. And you need to be wearing pretty dresses and not, want to work out and just owning that and being okay with it. And it's just, but she tells it in such a hilarious way. And again, like you would expect it to be this overly cheesy, like who's listening to that? But the arrangement's fantastic. The harmonies are amazing. You're getting like little key change things that are happening. It's a real composition.
And I do want an extended version of it with like a longer instrumental
No, there needs to be
bridge.
a
That
12 inch. There needs
there
to be
needs
a
to be a
12
12
inch.
inch.
It needed to
Yes.
be played in clubs. Absolutely. Yeah.
So the quick excerpt. When I was a little girl, my mama
Hmm.
said, "What's happened to your arms? Guess you got those bulges from beating up the boys in school." She said, "Biceps do not go well with white gloves and feminine charms. Get your priorities straight. Go do the breaststroke in the pool." So I learned to wear long sleeves at the parties, put Kleenex in my bra. Then at home, I'd go play Superman in the middle of my bedroom. Now, after all these years of muscle oppression, there's a place where I can say, well, where I can make a muscle, sorry, there's a place where I can make a muscle and everybody goes, ooh. So I want to, acknowledge, I mean, one of the criticisms that Meg got, which she deals with, was that once she hit Turning It Over, the music was especially not as political
Hmm.
as it used to be, or as people may have wanted it to be. And so she addressed that in this interview. And I hate that I've got three interviews here that I've brought, but I keep referring back to this Mary Pollock interview because it's so good. Um, she said there's a lot of leftist criticism of women's culture that says we talk about the personal too much. Of course, that's what makes feminism unique as a political idea. Feminism is an internal as well as external politic. We're talking about changing inside, changing the way that you and I are sitting on this sofa and talking, the kind of mutual respect we share, power sharing, a sense of equality as we talk, a sense of compassion about the world and its inhabitants, something that we can incorporate into our politics. We can't change the world until we change ourselves. This idea has always been a part of feminism. And yet, although I have always believed this, in some ways I've exercised very different value judgments about my own music. I used to think too much of this personal stuff, got to have some more issues. And so I've stifled my own creativity. That's one reason I didn't write instrumentals. And
Ah,
so,
yes.
and
And
so,
yeah, and we also have to talk about the fact that it did include two instrumental pieces on this album for the first time, and they're both gorgeous, and both, you kind of see instrumentals as like interludes or not as important, but I feel like you can't, I mean, there would be it would be doing the album such a disservice to not hear those two songs where they're placed on the record.
yes,
Moving Right Along, which, has that really lovely,
yes,
I just love that whole thing. And then later on, The Window Panes, which is a little bit more melancholy. And I mean, just both of them, I appreciate that she could, and I think in that interview was Margie Adam that
Margie Adam, yes,
encouraged her to include them. So I'm so grateful that she did, because, you know, again, you don't really know of women, especially not then, as composers that just get to do that. Just get to
right,
write instrumental pieces and include them on their projects.
yes, yes.
But to
Well,
go
and
back to what you were saying about the political and the personal and how they're so intertwined, I mean, that's just so key. That is just so key. And I feel like, you know, the spiritual piece of politics and where we place that, I feel like is so vital. Even now with our,
especially now,
especially now, I feel like it's so needed and so important to hold space for. I'm not saying every artist or even every activist or person who's committed to the struggle has to, you know, necessarily even believe in the spiritual or have that piece of them. But I do think for those of us who do, I think it would be doing a disservice to us to divorce that piece of us from that greater conversation of everything that's going on with the activism.
we have someone that just popped in that said Meg wrote more recently about a wild, wild heart while watching a chickadee. I believe she was trying to say would be well for every human being to have a bird's eye view. So much in all her lyrics. That's the truth.
Yep.
Yes, there is. Meg is a deep well, and this album was really transformative. I mean, for me, and I know for many, many, especially women that heard it, it was a transformative record. And I'm uh, grateful that she was brave enough at this juncture when she could have just continued churning out political work that was, I'm sure, would have been true to her vision, but it wouldn't have been all of her. And
Hmm.
so I'm really grateful that we got those glimpses, especially on on the last two Olivia records. And she's gone on to do some really wonderful work. One of my particular, you can find Meg also records now as Shambhavi Christian, or has recorded as Shambhavi Christian for a lot of years. If you go to the I always say it wrong, Siddha Yoga website, you can look for The Fire of My Love. It is one of the most exquisite albums you will ever hear. Just she's brilliant. She's a brilliant, deep seer. And that's the only
Hmm.
way I noticed it. And I wanted to also like acknowledge something you said about the spiritual, and not everyone has to have the spiritual. And I agree with that. I think that when we talk about the spiritual, we're not necessarily talking about a particular faith. I think
Yeah.
what we're talking about when we talk about the spiritual is simply introspection. And
Yes.
I think we are suffering, um, always have been, but now, especially because the people in power have no introspection and they have no interest in going inside. They only have interest in power. And so I think women's music also provides us with an amazing dream of another way of being in the world. And I'll just always, I mean, I get a little, every time I talk about music these days, I get a little emotional. Um, but it is so precious. This
Yeah.
music is just absolutely precious to me and changed. I mean, we would have never married. We
We
would
would
have,
not have.
we would have never married. And so I really, thank this music for helping me see myself
Yeah.
in a really special way. So
Yeah.
I want to route people as well. There's some wonderful resources. Radical Harmonies is available on the Goldenrod website.
Which,
Uh,
by the way, and we didn't even talk about
we
Goldenrod
didn't
and
even talk
Lady
about
Slipper,
Goldenrod.
and yeah, again, all women, women's distribution
Distributors,
channels. Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
So Radical Harmonies is an incredible document and you need it in your life. I'm hoping they will stream it again. For a while it was you could rent it on YouTube or purchase it. I hope they will do that again. But if you go to Goldenrod and purchase it, it's $20 going to a landmark organization. And I can't recommend this documentary enough. There's so many rich stories. It will turn your musical world and hopefully your personal world upside down. I also want to shout out Jamie Anderson, who's going to come on with me as well. We've got to set a date, but Jamie said she would love to come on, and we're going to talk about an album that we love from the women's music catalog. But she wrote a history of women's culture, women's music in particular, called An Army of Lovers, and she details. I mean, the detail in this book is absolutely stunning. Concert promoters. Producers, distributors, ASL interpreters. I mean, she names every name on the planet. You will be, if you're anything like me, you're going to go down rabbit holes and just, learn. It's an amazing, amazing story. And you can listen to most of Meg's music on YouTube. I'm hoping that Olivia Travel will put these records on all of the streaming outlets and digital stores so that we can at least download them and own them again, remastered, because these are important, important documents. So we're going to be talking about a lot of these records in the upcoming weeks. It's why I created this series, because there's just so much music the world hasn't heard. And I want to see your life changed the way it changed mine.
You
So
sound like a televangelist a little bit
I
right now. I
do.
really
Well,
appreciate it. Yeah.
I'm ready for my gig on I don't know what.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
so the next show will be whatever the first Thursday of July, and Monica Burris Page from Lady Flash, which is Barry Manilow's backing group. She's going to come on and talk with me about Lady Flash's Beauty in the Night. In July, we also
That's July
have
2nd. July 2nd.
July 2nd. And then in, I believe, the middle of July, I'm not sure of the order yet, but we also have coming in July, so I'm just going to say this. Rhiannon from Alive, one of the women's music groups, jazz extraordinaire, and Rhiannon is a singer's singer, and you can catch her on the road to this day with Bobby McFerrin. Rhiannon is another deep well. So she's going to come on and talk with me about the first Alive record. My good buddy Pam Mark Hall from CCM will be coming on to talk with me about her Keeper record. And we're booking August now, and we've got some exciting things. We're actually booking September too, because we're only doing this every other week, because I want it to be fresh, and I want, to bring as much as I can every week. So, or every other week.
Yeah.
So, and this weekend is our wedding anniversary.
This weekend is our wedding
We'll
anniversary.
go out on that note.
Oh
So,
yeah. Which Valentine's song was the problem. I was trying to think, was there any song from
That's
this
right. We
album?
used Meg's music at our wedding ceremony. Both songs were Meg Christian, Valentine's Song and Darshan.
That's right, and Darshan. But
And
yeah,
Darshan.
nothing from this
So
album.
Meg is woven into our lives in a really um, rich way. My classmate, Maria, my friend, not just my classmate, I love her so much. I love you, honey. I miss you. I miss you. I miss
Oh,
you. I hope I get to see you again someday. I'm so proud of you and the work you're doing. So join us again on the 2nd of
second,
July.
yeah.
I'm not good with the dates. And we're going to have a good conversation. But again, go to YouTube, look up Meg Christian. All the records are, for the most part, there in their entirety. A wonderful fan put them up, if I'm understanding right, with Meg's permission. So
Yes.
just
Oh,
enjoy.
we didn't talk about Southern
There she
Home.
is. There she is, this Meg fan. I love
Oh,
you,
hey.
girl. I love you. I mean, just been a friend for since I met Meg fan in when I was living in Charlotte, if I'm not mistaken, and just loves Meg, and has had such has done her deep study. So it's been a wonderful way to meet so many other wonderful people, and Alex Dobkin, who we met when we lived in the Hudson Valley, and just wonderful souls, wonderful music that the world should know more about. So I think we're through.
Yeah, I guess so.
We have a minute and 55 seconds remaining. What else do you have?
We didn't talk about Southern Home at
We didn't
all,
talk.
which I love that song, and there was not
Yes.
enough time to deal with that one. But go listen to Southern Home. It's all about growing up in a small town or growing up anywhere, and again, reconciling, coming to terms with where you come from, and what's the lyric? No longer to blame for the pain that I could have found anywhere. And
Anywhere. It's
I mean, because
everywhere.
the song could have been my Midwest home for me, honestly. I mean, it really is,
Yes.
relative. So yeah, check that song out. We also didn't talk about I Wish You Well.
We didn't. And there's a wonderful live clip on YouTube of Meg actually
Yes.
performing I Wish You
Gorgeous.
Well. So just check it out, explore. And you know what? We'll come back because we're going to have to talk about another Meg record too. I mean, so
I mean, I thought we were going to talk about Face the Music, but I love both of these albums.
I hope we did them justice. And we're just grateful you all came.
Yes.
Thank you, Liza. Thank you, Liza, so much. Um, and we'll see you on the 2nd. Enjoy the music. Oh, thank you, Margaret. I love you too. I love you too so much. So, oh, yeah. All right. Until next show. Have you ever heard?
Have you ever heard?
All
It's a
right.
great show. I really like it, Tim.
And Ray's just upstairs, so like we didn't make him go. Oh, there's Deb Ondo. So many
Oh,
wonderful,
hey,
wonderful
Deb.
souls. So many wonderful people. My friend, yes. There's Patsy. So many. Oh, Patsy. Yes. All right. 13 seconds. We're done. I love y'all. Have a good night. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining me for this week's Have You Ever Heard? I'd love it if you leave us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. We'll be back with another episode in 2 weeks. Until then, I hope you enjoy the tunes.